So, it's been a while. And, I mean, I guess you can tell, obviously. I'm not bald anymore. Yay! um, a fair amount's been going on since the last time I talked to everybody who was watching. Let's see, we finished chemotherapy. I think I said that. But I had a PET scan back in April, and the results were mixed. It was both a good sign and a frustrating one. It wasn't exactly what we were hoping for. And that's okay. That's just sometimes how it works. But what it ended up meaning was that I had to wait and we were going to do another scan. And in between that period, I had to start transitioning back into life. I started going back to work, and I went through a real hard period where my mental health took a really big hit. I thought I had it really hard while I was going through treatment actively, but this time was much worse for me personally. Whenever you hear about cancer stories, people always talk about how horrible the treatment is, how bad the chemotherapy, the immunotherapy, the radiation therapy, all of that, how bad all of that is. But there's not a lot of people who talk about the struggles of after that. You know, when I was in the worst of the active treatment, it was just so much go, go, go that all I could do was basically have the mentality of, I'm going to get through the next thing. I'm going to focus on this thing that's coming up. I'm going to do it. I'm going to get through it. And it was just an endless cycle of that where I didn't really have time to focus on any other part of my life. And then towards the end of April, when I was at the tail end of my short-term disability before going back to work, I really started to feel the effects of everything. Not the physical effects, but definitely the emotional ones. I went into a pretty dark period where I was suffering from something known as anhedonia, which, for those of you who don't know, it's basically a depression that's so severe that nothing brings you joy. All the things that I used to do that made me happy or gave me some form of fulfillment just didn't do anything for me at this point. And I remember just feeling like I'm always going to feel tired and weak, and my life is meaningless. It doesn't have any purpose to it. And I can say that there was a period where I really felt like I would have been better if I hadn't made it through. And I don't say that as a cry for help, but, things are very strange when you're going through something like this. And that's not just cancer, I would think. I think that's any traumatic experience. And I realized that I needed help. I really needed help. So I spoke with the therapist who the cancer clinic had provided, and she set me up with a survivorship counselor. Apart from that, I also decided it was time to start thinking about going back on antidepressants again. I had been on them before, but I had had mixed success, and in some cases, none. So I was very reluctant to do it, but in this case, I really felt like I had no hope of succeeding. So I realized that I needed extra help, for sure. And I'm happy to say that after going on the dosage for a little bit and going into the active treatment and getting back to work and actually getting on a routine again, I'm doing much better. I feel happy. I still have my moments where I'm not feeling amazing, but at the same time, they don't feel as overwhelming to me. And I think that's a combination of my outlook on life. I think it's a combination of my help or my chemical buildup in my brain due to using the antidepressants. And I feel like things are getting better. I'm going out more. I'm trying to find ways to bring meaning to my life that I couldn't before. I am working on trying to be creative again. For those who don't know, I actually had a little art project I was working on throughout my time in chemotherapy, and it's a blazer that is white that I was doing a bedazzling pattern on, to give it sort of this effect of blood drip. Um, I'm very inspired by the art of darkness and things that are morbid, because I felt like an outcast most of my life, and those kinds of things have always spoken to me. Um, and, you know, it's really just working on that project has made me realize how much I do want to get back into art. And I'm gonna really try this time, not just talk about it, but actually try to meet other people, other artists, get involved, find ways to create some of the projects that I want. But I feel like I've ranted off the path of why I originally recorded this video. So anyway, long story short with that, my mental health took a pretty big hit, and I'm still in counseling. I am still on the antidepressants, along with anti-anxiety meds, and I still am having occasional side effects. I had a really bad acid reflux thing happen to me this week, that had been going on since last weekend, and it was bad enough that at first I was very worried before remembering, oh yeah, when I was going through treatment, I would have something new pop up and I would just be like, oh, well, that's fun. Let's go talk to the team and see about getting something for that. So we did that, and it seems to have helped. I guess it just kind of, this one took me a little off guard because, you don't expect to be going through side effects when you finish treatment. But, cancer's weird. It's very strange. And in some ways, it's made my life harder. And I'm sure there are areas where I'm going to feel like it's made my life worse. But in other ways, it's made my life better. Now, again, when I say that, I won't say again, but when I say that, please do not make or think that I'm saying that I love the fact that I got cancer. That's most certainly not true. I hate that. It sucks being the guy who has cancer, or had, anything like that. It's to go back to work and have to, or into friend groups, and understand that people who maybe don't know you as closely are going to see you as, or, and who don't know you as closely and who know what you've gone through are going to see you as the person who had cancer, who was sick. It feels weird. Not to mention, on top of that, after 4 months of isolation and only talking to a select few family members and and my medical team that was working with me, my social skills were not the greatest. I'm not really sure how to interact at times, and trying to also figure out where to talk about my journey, but also not to make it about me is a real struggle. It can be really challenging. I remember I was working one day. It has happened twice, oddly enough, with two separate people that I work with, but they commented on my hair. One person was like, "Oh, you got a haircut. It looks nice. How do you feel about it?" And I had to very quickly make a decision of, okay, do I make this awkward, or do I just smile and, or, another person thought they were being funny and they said, "What in the world happened to your hair?" And on that one, I'll admit, I tried to hint at it. Instead of saying I had cancer, I said, after pausing, like I just did, it fell out. And I don't think they got the gist of what I was saying, but, it's challenging. Definitely. The chemo brain can be hard because it makes it so that I'll be talking and occasionally I will just randomly drop syllables from a word. I will. Right here, I have brain fog to the point where I can't always get my message across clearly. Things that I could get done really quickly sometimes take me a few more minutes. And yeah, it's not dramatically long, but it still is. It's those little inconveniences, like when you have a dull aching pain or something like that. Sure, you get used to it, you figure out how to deal with it, but it's still there, and it is still making life a little bit more difficult. It's a challenging situation that not a lot of people understand. You know, on one hand, I feel like I'm too ill to be around other people, but not ill enough to be considered a patient. It's a very weird juxtaposition. And to be fair, the real point of this video is not to say that I'm ill. In fact, it's actually a really good thing that I'm just dragging out because I'm trying to build suspense. But at this point, I think people might be realizing what I'm about to say, but I'm happy to announce that I went back for my second PET scan, third PET scan, but second post-treatment PET scan, and we got the results, and I am in remission. And it feels so weird to say that. When the medical provider, my nurse practitioner, called me and told me, it was the same feeling, oddly enough, as when the oncologist called me and told me that I had cancer. It was like two sides, or two opposite sides of the same coin, because there was that suspension of disbelief, or just that, not even suspension, but it was just a feeling of disbelief. And when I got the initial diagnosis, there was fear and sadness, but when there was the disbelief from the other one, there was also joy, some sadness here and there. I mean, and it was just, it's hard to describe. But I'm really happy about it, obviously. Apparently, we've also tested, there were some experimental tests that they ran on me that are used in other types of cancer. They're experimental at this point, like I said. So basically, the results are not something we can take as gospel truth. Instead, they have to be taken with a grain of salt. But basically, they use these tests to determine if there's possibility of reoccurrence, which is basically when you're out of cancer into remission, and then your body starts to manifest the cancer again. Or also, these tests are able to help determine the risk of potential secondary cancers, disease, possibly. I don't understand it really, but the good part is when they ran these two tests on me, they came back as negative, meaning my chances of developing anything are smaller, and that's amazing. And so for now, I enter into true survivorship. I feel like I kind of was doing a survivorship preview. Um, but with that survivorship, it's not like I'm done. I've still got to go back and get scanned occasionally. I've got to do checkups with the doctor where we go over my results. I need to do labs, and it's a 5-year period. And I may choose to go beyond that because a lot of patients say, hey, look, I'd still love to see, or to see a doctor regularly and get the treatments that I need. But, just as a precaution. Um, but yeah, it's been so surreal. And with this one, I mean the whole journey. It feels like a weird dream. It's almost as if my brain is trying to forget that it's happened on its own, regardless of how I feel about it. But at the same time, I have to keep reminding myself, no, it actually did happen. Even when I see my shadow and I see that the shape of my head is different due to the fact that my hair is so short, or I look in the mirror, I forget that change has happened. It's almost like I expect to see myself with a full head of hair. I mean, and to be fair, it's really coming back. You can still see there are some light patches here and there, and it's different. I mean, apparently it is curlier. My boss and my coworker pointed out that it's got a bit of an olive color to it right now, and color, texture, all of that's to be expected because the chemotherapy can change the the texture, sometimes temporarily, sometimes permanently, but we're not going to know until it gets longer. But it's a very weird feeling. Now, like I said earlier, though, I'm incredibly grateful for some of the things that I've learned on this journey. I feel that my family and I were struggling. We still had love for each other, but we didn't see each other as much, and we were not as communicative as we could be. I'm not going to go into full details because everyone here deserves their privacy, but this one, or I will say this opportunity, gave me the chance to really bond with them and really made me see how important it is to make sure that I maintain or improve the relationship I have with each of them. I'm grateful to see how loved I am by them. We all fight. We may not necessarily always do what's best, but at the end of the day, we're there for each other. And this was a real reminder of that. And it was tough to watch them have to go through everything with me. But at the same time, I wouldn't have had it any other way. I include my wonderful partner in my family when I say that, because she has been with me every step of the way. I remember the day that I got the diagnosis, I called her in tears and told her that this is what happened, and she took a breath, and then she said, we're going to get through this. We'll do what we have to. And she was there every step of the way. She came over, she took care of me. She slept on a cot on the floor for some nights because of the fact that I was just so uncomfortable in bed that I needed all the space I could. And I'm really grateful. Um, oh, it's a full circle moment. I cried when I announced this to everybody, and now I'm getting a little misty-eyed while talking about the other side of the journey. And it did come with its tough parts of it. Like, there were moments where I felt frustrated with family. There were moments where my partner needed something that I couldn't provide because I was feeling terrible, and that didn't feel good. I'm sure a lot of people here are very frustrated with the way that the world's been going. And I remember just sitting in various beds, either mine or the hospital bed or that I was in, or maybe one at my parents' house, watching the news and just being like, the world is burning down and I can't do anything. I'm stuck here being sick. And, it's a very frustrating situation because I feel like I need to be out there helping with the change. And I'm glad to say that tomorrow I'm going to be. It is June 13th. So tomorrow is June 14th, and that I'm sure many of us know, it's No King's Day. And I'm going to go. I remember today, I just felt very much like I can't just sit by and not do anything just because that's what's convenient for me. I'm not necessarily able to go to one of the bigger marches like here in my home city of Alexandria or at DC, but we're going to go to a smaller one so that at least we can make an appearance and actually get to say what we're doing, or and actually use our voices and do what we're supposed to as citizens of this country. And I feel happy that I'm able to do that again. It feels good. I feel like I'm finally getting the drive to find the purpose that I never could before. And it's still going to be hard. Like, I'm not saying, oh, well, now it's all uphill from here. No, it's not. I've got a lot that I've got to think about. And I've got a lot of things that I have to think about for the future. Like I said, just because those tests came back saying that my chances of developing some kind of sickness are negative right now, that doesn't mean it doesn't happen. I now am also going to be meeting with an oncologist in the survivorship clinic who's going to help me figure out a specific tailored plan to me for post-life cancer. Or I'm sorry, life, my life post-cancer, post-life cancer. That, I think that's a little beyond the point, because at that point, never mind, morbid humor. But yeah, I mean, it's just, it's different. I feel almost like the scales have been lifted from my eyes, and I finally am getting to live for the first time. I'm working on finding ways to meet new people, get new perspectives, find new ways to make myself feel fulfilled, so that life isn't just working and being alone. And I think that there's a lot of progress that is being made. And that's another way that I am grateful for this whole experience, because I feel like it really has helped me to put things into perspective. I'm also very grateful to the medical team who was helping me. My oncologist, my nurse practitioner, all of the various nurses, clintechs, doctors, whomever that I worked with. I will say there were maybe one or two that I can't say I would recommend, but for the most part, everybody else was amazing. I fully recommend the Inova team for dealing with cancer. The Shar Cancer Institute is so amazing in everything that it offers. The fact that they've teamed up with Life with Cancer, which is there to provide support to patients and their families, is amazing. The team at Inova Fairfax, on the oncology ward, was amazing. They always did everything that they could to make me feel comfortable. And really, these are people who do not get enough thanks. They're working their asses off for 12 hours a day, sometimes at night, and sometimes it's super busy for them. Working in an oncology ward, there are some people that are in much more dire situations than others. I felt very weird because I was a person who got to come and go and normally didn't need to have a ton of help while I was there, other than just basic stuff such as getting my medicine on time, having my chemotherapy administered, all of that. But there were people who were in, let's see, like, who had restrictions such as no food by mouth after midnight. Limbs had to be bound. There were people who were in neutropenic isolation. Basically, if you've watched one of my older videos or are a little more familiar, that's when your blood counts or your white blood cell counts are so low that you cannot be outside. I went through my rare period where I had to do something similar to that, back when I had the neutropenic fever. I saw people who had machines attached to them other than the IVs. I met somebody who had been in the chemo ward for, I think they had told me, roughly about 30 months. And it's so hard to think about that. Like, it's very difficult to really think about just how hard any experience like this can be until you get to see it firsthand. And I'm not just saying my experience. I feel very lucky that what I had was short, but I also have to constantly remind myself that it wasn't any lesser. The only reason that I got to get out so quickly is because they had to hit me with it much harder. And that's a hard lesson to learn. I remember at one point I struggled with this feeling that maybe fighting cancer wasn't such an impressive thing, at least for me, even though I would say anybody else fighting it was astounding in a heartbeat. I don't know. I don't believe that anymore. I'm at a better point where I'm like, no, this was a great thing. This shows just how tough you are. And it taught me to be a little kinder to myself. It's also taught me to try not to care as much what people think. I don't know. We spend so much time tiptoeing around stuff, and when you're kind of reminded that your time is limited, you just don't you just feel like you don't have the ability to care anymore about that. And, it does result in occasionally I'll say something a little too blunt, and then I gotta go back and be like, whoops, my bad. But, it's made it at least to the nice point where I'm just like, take me as I am. If I'm not for you, then I'm not for you, but that's not my problem. You deal with it. So, I don't know. I don't really know how to even end this video personally, and I need to because we're going on a half hour here, but it's just something where I feel hope, I feel nervous, I feel sad for the person who I was that I feel died, but I also feel very excited for the person that I've become and the person that I'm going to become as a result of this. It's a very contemplative type of state that I feel like I'm in. And it's a new chapter of life. And I don't feel like I can just cheesily say something like I'm going to carpe the diem, but at the same time, I'm fully committed to trying to figure out this new stranger that occupies my body. And so far, I think he's beautiful. And I am loving what I'm seeing of him. He's kind and caring and compassionate. And just for the record, I'm not saying this to say how amazing I am. I'm saying it because for the longest time in my life, I did not feel that way about myself. I felt like I was not worth anything. And it's just so eye-opening to finally see that I was very wrong. And so I look forward to getting to know Matt better. And I look forward to getting to enjoy the relationships in my life with other people better. To not take things for granted and to always try to think about others. And I'm so grateful. I appreciate all of you coming on the journey with me. And we're not done yet. Like I said, this isn't the final thing. I'm sure eventually I'll try to film something else, but kind of like this one, it's probably going to be a little while because there's just not a lot to report on, and that's good. But if anyone has questions or wants to know about it, I'm very much determined to try to help make my journey a learning experience. So anything that I can impart, I will. And even though I'm no expert, I look forward to talking with people about it. But everything here is, I don't know. I felt like I had something profound there and I lost it. And I also feel like I had a good sign off that I was doing, but anyway. Ugh. So, see, I still don't have those answers, but that's okay. I'm human. I'm still alive. And you know what? Even though it's messy, it's good.